animated kind of instructor, and that's just the recording is now started. So just again, welcome everyone to our session today. My name is Brian Ertel. I'm from Mississauga Fire. And just so you know, before I got into public education, which is my current role the past 3 years, I was a firefighter in Mississauga, and I ran calls on the fire truck on a regular basis when I was on shift. So that's my background. I think I have a lot of credence when I say talk to you today, because I've seen many of the mistakes and things that people forget and the consequences of them. So I just want to let you know that I've seen many of these situations, and we're going to talk about my first topic, which is prevention. How do we prevent a fire from happening or an accident from happening even in the first place? I don't know if everyone knows, but the number one fire that our firefighters go to in the city of Mississauga, pretty much on a daily basis, sometimes 2, 3, 4 times a day, are cooking fires. And that's caused by unattended cooking. So people put stuff on the stove, sometimes they put stuff on the barbecue, and then the phone rings or the doorbell rings or one of their children needs something, and they leave that stove, they leave that barbecue unattended. And that's when we might have a fire. The oil that you're cooking, the food you're cooking in the pan, if it's not being watched, could overheat and start a fire. So the number one fire that we go to in our city and really across the province and even the country, it's always unattended cooking. That is the number one cause of fires, pretty much in all of Canada and the US. So when we talk about cooking, we just want to make sure that if you are cooking, stay with your pan, stand by your pan, stay with what you're cooking. If you have to leave for whatever reason, just turn it off. Just turn off the burner and do what you have to do. When you get back to the kitchen, turn it back on. Now the oven is different. You can, obviously, you don't have to sit by the oven while you have some food in there, but please don't leave the house with the oven on. Because again, something that's whatever's cooking in the oven, the water could boil dry, and now you've got a fire in the oven. So just make sure that if you're going to, for whatever reason, leave the house, turn off that oven and turn it back on when you get home. It's just will avoid and prevent a possible fire. If you happen to forget my message, and it happens, like I said, it happens every day in our city, and you come back in the kitchen and your pot of oil is on fire, that's not a good thing. So there are some things that you can do to extinguish that fire, put it out. And the best thing you can do if you have an oil fire or a grease fire on the stove is have the lid for that pot right close by and put it on top of the pot. Just smother it with the lid. And that's going to take away the air. And fire needs air to burn. If you take away the air, that fire will start to go down and go out. So you need a tight fitting lid to put on top of that pot to smother it. If you don't have a lid, like I was at a session last week, and some of my friends in Sichuan, in Cantonese and Mandarin community, they don't really have lids because they told me they use woks, and there's not always a lid for the wok. So I suggested if you have a cookie sheet or a metal baking sheet, same idea, put it on top. So it doesn't always have to be a lid, the lid's the best, but a metal cookie sheet, a metal cooking sheet will also smother that fire. Once that's done, you can turn off the heat. And then I want you to get out of the house and call 911, just to have our firefighters come and make sure that that fire is out. Because if it was quite big, it might have got into the cupboards or into the fan hood. And you don't think there's fire in there, there could be. Our firefighters will check it out. You just call and say, I've had a fire on the stove. The fire seems to be extinguished. I'm outside. Can you send your firefighters to make sure the fire's out? So that's cooking. And one last thing, never, ever, ever put water on a grease fire. If you put water on a burning pot of oil or a burning pan with cooking oil in it, it will literally explode in flames. And the flames that might have been this high are hitting the ceiling of your kitchen and going across the ceiling. That's how serious it is. And if you think I'm exaggerating, go onto YouTube and just Google in something like putting water on a grease fire. Many fire departments have excellent videos on what happens when you put just a teaspoon of water on an oil fire. It's disastrous and it's very dangerous for you. The next thing I want to talk about, around your stove. Everybody likes to keep, a towel on the oven handle, and they like to keep the paper towels right next to the stove so that they're handy. And they like to put their little plastic spice containers on top of the stove, and all those things are flammable. And when they're close to the stove and you're cooking, the wind, open window could blow that paper towel a little bit open, and if you're not watching, could start a fire. If you have a towel on the oven door and you inadvertently close that oven and part of the towel's in there, now you could have a fire with that if you're not standing with your cooking. So keep all your flammables away from the stove top. The other thing, some of you might have little children or grandchildren. And the one thing that's very important is, and we teach this to the children in school when I go out to the schools, we teach them hot and not. What's hot, what's not. And so I show a picture of a stove and I say, is this hot? And they all go, it's hot, it's hot. And then I remind them that anything that's hot, I get them to put their arm out just like this. And I say, if you can't touch the stove, or you can't touch a campfire, or you can't touch the iron, or you can't touch the fireplace, that's a good distance away. Never get closer than an arm's length away from the barbecue, anything hot. So just a reminder for your children and your grandchildren, please remind them to never get closer than an arm's length away from anything hot in the house. So I've been talking about prevention. And if you do all the things I've been talking about, you will prevent a fire. The next thing I want to talk about, I'm going to get a little close here. This is a candle. And who doesn't like candles? Mary, do you like candles?
I like a smelly one too.
I was just going to say, the best candles are the ones that, they have a nice smell. I like pine. I like the pine ones because it smells like the forest to me.
Yeah, Christmas coming, we will have a lot coming out
and
now.
Cranberry and all those fun ones. The problem, candles are a fire hazard. And if you have them, you need to stay with them. You can't leave the room. It's nice to have a real candle going, but you need to be with it, just like the stovetop. Because let's say you have a cat. Cats are all over, and a dog. You have this nice candle and you leave the room and the cat jumps up on the coffee table and pushes over possibly that candle onto the carpet. Now you've got a fire. Here's what I suggest. These are battery operated candles, and you might see the little glow there. It's hard to see on the camera, but it has a very nice, what do you think, ladies? You can see that little glow there. These are very safe. They just don't smell great. They don't have a nice smell, but these you can leave and you don't have to, you can leave the room and they're safe. So it's another alternative to prevent a fire. If you do have a candle, we recommend that you have ones that are kind of in those jars. They're nice and heavy and that they're very hard to tip over. And also the jar ones, I have them at home. When you're done, you can just cover it with the lid, the glass lid. And now, you know, the chance of any fire happening is very low. So just be mindful of candles and the dangers associated with candles. And that goes with incense too. Some of our cultures use incense and that's fantastic. Again, please, if you're using incense in your home, please stay with it until it is burned down. I went to a fire once a few years ago and someone had a very nice shrine in a closet and you could open it up and then they had their incense there. They left the room and the fire started in the closet because of that incense. And that's the fire I had to respond to. The damage was quite minimal, but there was still damage. So if you're using candles and incense for religious purposes, just be mindful that you need to stay with, at least with them, the incense till it's burned down, or the candles till you blow them out. Let's talk about electrical. Everybody has a cell phone. We all do. Some of us have two, a work one and a personal one, but we all use cell phones. And cell phones need to be charged regularly. We all know that. I've got an example of a really crummy charger. It's kind of broken and it's frayed and it's in rough shape.
Wow.
This one here, like, because people sometimes when they go to unplug it, they pull by the wire, right? They just yank on that wire instead of holding it. And then that gets damaged. And before you know it, you might have exposed wires that can cause two things: a fire. If it's being charged on a flammable surface, it could cause a fire, or it can cause an electrical shock, both of which you don't want. So my suggestion for you handy women, and it's a very simple one. If you have these chargers at home, this I cut, so ignore that. But if you have ones that are looking really rough, just go out and get a new one. And that way you're fire safe and you're shock safe as well. Because you know what? Fire is obvious. If you get a shock from an outlet or from anything electrical, it can be really bad for your heart. And it can put your heart into what we call an arrhythmia, which it beats regularly when it's good. But if you get a shock, it could cause that heartbeat to become irregular, or turn into an arrhythmia that could cause a heart attack. So we don't want shocks. They're not good for anybody. And as we get older, they're even more dangerous. So that's charging. If you're charging your cell phone, a few things I want you to remember. Cell phones have lithium-ion batteries in them. We all know that. And when you're charging this phone, it gets hot. It gets warm. Let's say it gets warm. And you can feel that. Please never charge it on a bed or on a pillow or on the couch or on anything that can burn. Because if this malfunctions, and I'm going to talk about lithium-ion batteries in a second, they become a very big problem. And I want to share that with you is something very recent that I need to share with you ladies about lithium ion batteries. But if you're charging your phone on a couch, on a chair, on whatever's flammable, and that battery gets super hot or is actually defective, it can cause a fire. So I suggest you charge it on a table, or you charge it on the counter, or you charge it when you go to bed. If you need it by your bed, you charge it on the table by your bed, or if there's no carpet on the floor beside your bed. There's, just in case it gets hot, the chance of causing a fire is less when it's not on flammable surfaces. The other thing that Mary and I were just talking about a few days ago, lithium ion batteries. Some of you might have e-bikes, or you might have scooters, or you might have skateboards. And if I don't have any of those, but children and grandchildren of yours might. And obviously those are quite large batteries and they need to be charged. What's happening is that lithium ion batteries that are being charged are possibly defective and they're causing fires. And there was just a fire in New York City just a few days ago where over 36 people were injured because someone was charging an e-bike in their apartment and it was close to their exit door, and that battery started on fire. It was defective. And when those batteries go on fire, they contain a very flammable liquid. And when that liquid starts on fire, I've read in the literature, it is like a blowtorch. And I think with your plumbing, you've seen, you know what a blowtorch is. It's a very intense flame. It's not just a flickering flame like our candles. It is an intense, hot flame. And that's what lithium ion batteries do if they're defective and catch on fire. So a few things to remember with lithium batteries. If you're going to charge it and you have to charge your stuff, always stay with it. The person had charged theirs and went to bed. And by the time they realized there was a fire in their apartment, that fire was quite well established. So never charge when you're sleeping or when you're not watching it or when you go out. The next thing with lithium batteries, please remember that they are, well, they can be, if they're not standardized. And I'm going to talk to you, when I talk about fire alarms, smoke alarms, I'm going to talk about CSA standards and ULC standards. A lot of the lithium ion batteries that the fire department in New York is identifying as defective and causing fires are ones that are bought offshore, that the quality control is not there. And they don't have the certification standards. Make sure your batteries have either a CSA, a ULC, some sort of certification that the chances of them starting on fire are less than ones that are bought offshore that don't have those standardizations. I think for prevention, I know a couple other things that handy women need to know. It's turning into heating season, and I'm not happy about that. I just got back from Arizona and it was beautiful and warm down there. It's going to be cold this weekend, and that's just Canada. Welcome to Canada. But furnace filters. If you have a furnace, you need to change the filter in your furnace, the air filter. And it's a simple task. There's usually a little door there with the filter in. You slide the filter out, get the number off the filter, because there's many sizes, many different ones. So you'll look on the one you just took out because it fits, it was there and it fit. Make sure that when you go to a store, you buy the same filter. And all you do is dispose of that dusty filter into the garbage and you put a new filter in, and it's good for the season. Some people do it twice a year, but really you only need it for when that furnace is running for 6 months. So some people will, I always do it at the start of the season, and then I got a new filter, and then next fall I look for a replacement. So change the filter in your furnace. And it's also very important. I know you guys want to do a lot of your own little jobs. You need every year a technician to check your furnace, especially if it's gas, but even if it is other oil. You need to have that checked by a technician. That's something, I don't do that. I'm not certified to do that, but you can get a technician to come in and just make sure that your furnace is running efficiently and it's running safely. Dryers. Let's talk about dryers. Many people, most of us have dryers in our house. And the one thing about dryers is there's a daily thing or a thing you have to do before or after every use. And that is to replace or to clean, not replace, to clean the lint filter, the lint trap. That little fuzzy lint is extremely flammable. It's like millions and millions of tiny little fibers with air pockets in between. It is prime conditions that if you get too much heat, that stuff starts on fire very, very quickly. I've gone to many dryer fires because of that, because that lint is built up and the dryer gets hot because it can't breathe. And now it's overheated and can cause a fire. If you're using your dryer, like anything, please just use it when you're at home. It's not a good idea to turn it on and go out. What if it doesn't shut off and it's still going and going? So it's technology. Technology is not perfect. Now, the other thing that a handy woman can do, not just the lint trap, even a handy guy can do that. I want you to, twice a year, just pull your dryer out from the wall. Some of them might be on wheels. Dryers aren't heavy. Like washing machines are very heavy. If you try to move your washing machine, you'll know what I'm saying. They're very, very heavy. Dryers aren't. Dryers are very light, actually. You're going to just get a hold of your dryer and you're going to pull it out from the wall. And you're going to see a hose from the back of the dryer. It's about 4 inches in diameter. Some of them are metal, some of them are plastic, but you're going to see a hose, and then it's going to go into ductwork that's going to go outside and vent outside. Twice a year, it's a really good idea. Just take that hose off and vacuum with your little tool, you know, that longer tool that can reach a bit. Reach in and just vacuum any lint that might have got past the lint trap into the ductwork. And same with the stuff that's going outside. Just reach your vacuum in and give that a good cleaning. And then that way, you again prevent a fire in the ductwork or in the venting. When you go outside, make sure your vent is clear. This time of year, squirrels and chipmunks and all kinds, they like to put stuff away for the winter. If they have access to that vent, they might have already loaded it up with all kinds of treats for the winter. So you'll want to check the vent outside just to make sure it's clear. That will also go if you have a furnace that vents outside, a gas furnace, check the exhaust vent and just make sure it's clear. All you have to do, take a look, stick your finger in as far as it'll go. If there's no obstructions, you know it's clear. Or if it's running and it's cold, you're going to see the steam coming out and you're going to know it's working. So those are some tips on winter maintenance. I think prevention-wise, I covered all the topics that I want to talk about. One last thing, and I've got a really cool picture here, and I hope you can see it. It says, see that exhaust vent on this one here? This is the exhaust vent for your furnace. And in the winter, it's very important that that is always allowed to exhaust. Because if it gets snow piled up and that gets blocked, carbon monoxide could come back in your house and the furnace probably won't work, it'll shut down. Always make sure that in the wintertime, your exhaust vents for the furnace and the water heater are clear of snow. And then that way you don't have to worry about CO poisoning. Smokers. If you do smoke, it's really better. Again, I'm talking all these things prevent fires. If you smoke, and lots of people smoke, that's fine. If you smoke, a good way to prevent a fire in your home or in your apartment is to smoke outside. It's just a lot safer if you have smokers that they just sit outside or stand outside and smoke outdoors. That way, we don't have a problem of fire in the house. The other thing, if you live in a condo, in a high rise, please don't flick your cigarette butts over the balcony. We've had fires in Mississauga because people are flicking their smoking materials, their cigarettes, their cigars, if they're smoking marijuana, whatever, and they're flicking it over, and the wind can sometimes catch it and blow it onto someone else's balcony. And if they have furniture there and it lands on some furniture, it can start a fire on someone's balcony. Or if it lands in the gardens below and it's super dry, it can start a fire in the gardens. So please don't flick your butts. Best place to do that, to deal with that, is have just a container, a metal container with either water or sand. And when you're done smoking, put your cigarette or your smoking material into that sand metal bucket, not a plastic bucket, a metal bucket or a metal can full of sand or water. So I've talked enough about things that I want you to do for prevention. I could go on literally. I could go on. Well, I'll give you another handy woman thing to do. I love to barbecue. It's really important that you keep your barbecue clean because it builds up with grease and excess food and that. And again, if you're not watching it, that barbecue literally could start on fire. And where do most people have the barbecue? Right beside the house, under the awnings, because in case it's raining. And if that starts on fire, it's going right up into your attic. And we, again, many, many examples. I'm not making these up. It's not, they happen once in a, they happen a lot. So your barbecue, keep it clean. Simple to do. Just a brush is always something. We can brush the grill. If there's grease and stuff built up around the burner, clean that out. Just clean it out and make it all clean, and you'll have less chance and stay with what you cook. So all my topics today so far have been about prevention. How do we prevent fires from happening? Let's say the next thing that we do now, you forgot what I talked about, or a friend of yours forgot what we discussed on ways to prevent accidents or fires, and we have a fire. The next thing I want to talk to you about is detection. And detection is a way for you to know if there is smoke or fire in your house. And obviously, smoke alarm. That's a way to detect smoke, our smoke alarms. And I don't know if you know, but if you live in a house, you must have a minimum of one smoke alarm on every level of your house, a minimum of one. So if you have a basement, one in the basement. If you have the main floor, one in the main floor, not in the kitchen, not right in the kitchen, but just outside the kitchen, better place for it. And then one upstairs. That's the law. That's the fire code. It's required. Let's talk a little bit. I want to talk to you quickly about a smoke alarm, and then I'm going to talk about how easy they are to replace or install. So our smoke alarms, this one here, it is a combination alarm. It's a combination smoke and carbon monoxide alarm. Carbon monoxide alarms are also required in your home if you have a gas stove, a gas fireplace, a gas water heater, a gas furnace. You have a garage with a car in it. Any of those things required by law, one carbon monoxide alarm outside of every sleeping area. So you don't need it one. It's good to have one in every bedroom, that's fine. But if you all sleep upstairs, one carbon monoxide alarm upstairs. If someone does, a son, a daughter sleeps in the basement, then at least one down in the basement. Best place to put these, right outside of sleeping areas. Either right in the bedroom or outside in the hallway, outside the sleeping areas. So this one, like I said, a combination alarm, smoke and CO all in one. It's the other thing I want to share with you that I love about these new alarms. They are 10-year lithium. So we talked about lithium, very small lithium, no, not a e-bike size, but they have 10-year lithium batteries, the newest ones. So you never have to, when the clock changes, go around the house and change your smoke alarm batteries. These ones last for 10 years. And that's the lifetime of a smoke alarm. It's 8 to 10 years. So even if it's never been used or it's never gone off, after 8 years, 10 years, we need to replace them because they're getting old, they're getting tired, and they may not be as trustworthy. And remember, working smoke alarms save lives. I'm sure no one's going to dispute the fact that a working smoke alarm that lets people know there's a fire in their home saves people's lives. The fires that happened in the last few months in Brampton, they did not have working smoke alarms in their home. And people died, children died. And it happens across our province. We've had over, I think it's close to almost 30 deaths now across the province due to fire. Some people did have working smoke alarms, the majority didn't, or people didn't practice their escape. And I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. So, combination alarm is very good. 10-year lithium battery, very, very good. How do we know it's working? And we can count on it. They all have a test button. And if you look right there in the middle, that's my test button. I'm going to ask you handy ladies that at least once a month, if not once a month, once every couple months, to test your alarms in your house. And that's going to take probably getting on a ladder. So again, comfort on that ladder, doing some basic stuff. And you're just going to go and you're going to press the test button on the alarm to make sure that it's working. So right now, I'm going to test this alarm. And just give me a sec, my headset is moving around on me. We're going to test this one, and I'm going to have you listen for two things. A smoke alarm beeps 3 times. A CO alarm, or carbon monoxide alarm, beeps 4 times. So if you ever hear your alarms go off at home, and there's no smoke, but it's going off, and it's beeping 4 times, there's a good potential that there's carbon monoxide in your home. You need to get out and call 911, just like you would do with smoke. So here we go. I'm going to test. In fact, I'm going to get one of my friends here. You're just going to press the button there and hold it for 1 second. Let it go. smoke. And that's carbon monoxide. And it's going to give them one last beat. When you do that and you hear the alarm go off, you know it's working. And now you can go to bed at night. You can rest assured that you're going to be warned of a fire or carbon monoxide in your home. How many people have had their alarms make what we call a chirp? A very quick little chirp.
Yeah.
And then 30 seconds goes by, 45 seconds, and all of a sudden, chirp. And it usually happens at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're trying to sleep. That alarm is giving you a message. That alarm is telling you, my battery, if I use regular batteries, are getting low, or it's dusty. And when it gets dust inside of it, it affects the sensor. And everybody's house is dusty. We all get dust in there. If there's dust in here, it could affect the sensor and it's going to start to chirp. Let you know something's not right. Just grab a vacuum cleaner and just vacuum it. What I usually do, I just take it and I blow that dust out. Both work, whatever you want to do. The third thing is it might be older than 8 or 10 years and it's getting old, or it's defective. Something's wrong with it. When it chirps, you need to know something's wrong. Change the battery. If it's a regular battery, not a lithium, change the battery, try that. If that doesn't help, vacuum it. See if that helps. If that doesn't help, if it's outside the bathroom, and sometimes your alarm might go off or it might chirp because of steam from the bathroom, might have to change the location of it. If all those fail, go out and buy yourself new ones or a new one, whatever. Do not wait. Do not wait until the weekend. Do not wait until they go on sale. Do it immediately so that you can be safe, so you don't die in a house fire. So I was going to talk to you for a second. Installation. These things are very, very easy to install. They have 2 pieces, a backing plate and the regular alarm. And remember I told you about that CSA and UL? I'm going to get this one pretty close. You might be able to see the CSA standard, but it'll have all kinds of writing on the back that will point you to the CSA and UL, Underwriters Laboratories, certifications. That's what you want on everything you buy. Extension cords, crock pots, any appliance. Look for the standard, the safety standards, Canadian Safety Council, all these things. That way you're buying quality that's been tested, made to quality standards. So you've got the backing plate, you've got the main component. You'll take it out of the package, and the backing plate comes with 2 screws and some plugs. What I do sometimes, you ladies have used drills. Just find a location where you want to put it. And smoke alarms always go on the ceiling because smoke rises. We don't put them on at the floor level. Smoke alarms always must go on the ceiling because smoke rises. CO alarms can go plug in because CO is about the same weight as air. It's from the ceiling to the floor. If it enters the room from the floor to the ceiling, just en masse. Whereas smoke starts at the floor and moves to the ceiling first. Just drill some small little holes, smaller than the plug. So it's going to have a plastic plug. Don't use a drill that's bigger than the plastic plug, or else the plug's going to fall out and it's not going to work for you. So just a very, very small drill bit that's going to leave a fairly small hole, but big enough to kind of put that plug in and then tap it in with a hammer. And now it just stays in the ceiling. The plug just keeps the screws from getting dislodged or falling out. It just gives it some extra stuff to dig its threads into. So that's why the plugs are there. Then once you get the plug in, the plug, put your backing plate at the ceiling, line up. There's obviously some little holes there. Line up your holes with the plugs and screw it in. There's just two little screws with either a screwdriver or a power driver a bit, and they just screw into the wall. They're like they're a quarter inch. They're very small. They don't have a lot of weight to carry. Once this is in the ceiling and it's all secure and you're happy, the smoke alarm just fits and twists. And that's as hard as it is. Just they twist to come out, they twist to go in. If some of my friends here aren't comfortable with screwdriver and the drill or whatever, you can use two-sided tape. So you go to the store and they have that Scotch brand double-side tape. And you just put 2 pieces, 4 pieces on the backing plate, and then the other double-side tape sticks to the ceiling. If you have a stucco ceiling, it's not going to work, right? That stucco ceiling is not flat. It has to be a nice flat ceiling for that double-sided tape to work. So if you got a stucco ceiling, you're going to have to use the screws. But pretty basic stuff and so easy to do. Detection, a couple more things I want to discuss regarding detection. We talked about that they have to be on every story of your home. Can you have more? Absolutely. You want to put smoke alarms in every bedroom? Absolutely, go ahead. You can never have too many. You just have to always have the minimum 1 smoke alarm. So testing them, I like you to test them monthly, bi-monthly, every other month to make sure that they're working. If you have to change the batteries, let's say you still have the old ones with the batteries, AA's or the other 9-volt, I think they're called. If you have to do that, I recommend at least once a year. Twice a year is a little bit, we like to say twice a year. Those batteries will last you one year. So let's say in the spring, when the clock changes in the spring, just change those batteries. Again, simple. Twist that alarm, bring it down from the ceiling. There's a little door with the batteries in. Pop the door open, pull out the old batteries, put in new. You know what? You can keep those other ones for a TV remote, or just put them, use them for some other, or your kids' toys. Because if they die when your kids are playing with their toys, it's not so you don't have to throw out good batteries. You're gonna use them somewhere else. So changing the batteries at least once a year is critical. I'm going to talk just for a second on things I want you to look for in your home or your apartment that would be not a good smoke alarm. So if you look at this one, that I got this actually from a house about a year ago. Someone said my smoke alarm doesn't work. And I said, oh, that's unfortunate. And I said to the lady, how old do you think it is? And she goes, oh, I can't remember. This was in someone's house just 8 months ago. It's a 2005 smoke alarm. And we're at 2022. And the person couldn't understand why it wasn't working anymore. An alarm that was over, do the math, 2005 to almost 20 years old, 17 years old. Now,
I have one of that, and I found out, oh, they have no battery. But luckily, they on the side have another one. Batteries must be something new. If I rent apartments.
They do. So first of all, very old. Look at the colors. I hope it shows up on the camera. Maybe, yeah, it does. This is a new alarm. It's nice and white. Look at this one. It's yellow. Maybe people smoked, but even then, over years and years of living in a house and things that are plastic, it also was painted. You can see paint on this thing. See the paint? If you live in a place, you rent a place, and you've got smoke alarms that look like this, please talk to your landlord. Please tell them I need new smoke alarms, or ask them how old those smoke alarms are. If they don't know, then just tell them, then you would feel better with new smoke alarms. It's the landlord's responsibility to provide working smoke and CO alarms to their tenants. Last thing I'll talk about, how are we doing for time, Mary?
Fine, perfect.
Good.
Amazing.
So there's two types of smoke alarms. There's the battery one that I just shown you, and then these ones here. And these ones are called hardwired alarms. Hardwired alarms work from electricity, thus the wires. See the wires there? They work from electricity. And some people will say, well, what happens if the hydro goes out? It happens. We have a storm, we have whatever, hydro goes out. Now my alarms aren't working. They have backup batteries in them. So when there's no power to the alarm, the backup battery will kick in to make sure that this alarm still works until the hydro comes back on, till the electricity comes back on. If I had a preference between smoke alarms that are battery and hardwired, hardwired are better, and I'll tell you why. Hardwired ones, if you have a house and you have hardwired alarms in the basement, the main floor, the bedroom, and you have a fire in the basement, these all go off together. So if the basement one goes off, the bedroom ones go off. And it's it lets you know very, very quickly. The battery ones, it'll go off, but you may not hear that alarm until the smoke gets up to the next level. And then you might hear that alarm, especially if the door's closed to the basement. So these are the better option, but there's nothing wrong with battery as well. I know you ladies are going to be learning about some electricity from an electrician coming up. I would suggest that it is possible to change these, and maybe you could ask your electrician to explain that. Me personally, I keep my electricity experience to a very, very low level. If I have to replace my hardwired alarms, I get a contractor to do that. It's not too complicated, but it's life safety stuff. You can try to maybe rewire an outlet or something that you might learn from your electrician friend. If it's not right, it should not cause a fire. These are life safety things, and I count on a contractor or a certified electrician to do that. How long do you think smoke alarms last? They last about 8 to 10 years, whether they're hardwired or whether they're battery. 8 to 10 years. And then it's time to buy new ones. They might work for you 10, 11, 12 years. They might. But are we going to try to save a few dollars and risk our lives? Just after 8 or 10 years, or 8 years around there, start to keep an eye out for ones that go on sale. Just keep your eye out, Home Depot, Rona, Canadian Tire, wherever you shop. Please don't buy smoke alarms online. They're cheap, but they don't have certifications. They are very unreliable, and they're cheap. They're garbage. And again, you might say, oh, I bought them online for like $10 each. Are you going to really risk your family's life to save that extra $20 for some crap? So just remember that. We've talked about carbon monoxide alarms. I just want to talk about carbon monoxide for a second. Smoke is obvious. It's obvious. You can see it. You can see smoke. You can smell smoke. Sometimes you can even taste smoke. It's pretty obvious. Even a person that's, impaired with their taste or their vision, they might be able to already smell that smoke. They don't need to see it. They'll smell it, or they might even taste it. Carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide is invisible. Carbon monoxide has no taste. Carbon monoxide has no smell. But it will kill you if it accumulates in your home. And it can accumulate in your home. I'm going to give you it's a good story, but it was a very scary one. A few weeks ago, our firefighters went to a call for carbon monoxide in a townhouse unit. And the neighbors could hear the neighboring unit's alarm going off. And they thought it might have been smoke, it would have been whatever. They could hear the alarm just going off constantly. And the firefighters went to the caller's house. Nothing was in their place. So let me back up. The caller, their alarms were going off. That was it. The caller's alarms were going off. And so they called and they were waiting outside. Our firefighters went in. We have instruments and we couldn't pick up any CO in that caller's unit. Like it was strange. It was going off very low levels. So our firefighters said, let's check the adjacent units and the townhouses. They knocked on the door of the adjacent unit. An elderly couple were living there, no CO alarm. And the firefighters went in and our meters went off the map for CO. Extremely high levels. And it was only because those seniors, it was daytime and they had not gone to bed. And the neighbor called that we identified high levels of carbon monoxide in that adjacent unit. You know what those people had done by accident? They had left their car running in the garage. And for whatever reason, the car was running in the garage. And because they didn't have a CO alarm in their house, they weren't warned of it. They couldn't smell it, couldn't taste it, but the neighbor's alarm picked it up. They're very sensitive. So it was a happy story that those seniors, if that neighbor wouldn't have called or our firefighters wouldn't have investigated a little further, those seniors would probably be dead today from carbon monoxide poisoning. So that's how important our CO alarms are. The last topic I want to talk about. So we talked about prevention. How do we prevent a lot of bad stuff from happening? If we have something like a fire happen, how do we detect it? Well, we have our smoke alarm or our CO alarm. Finally, escape. Once you hear your smoke alarm or your CO alarm go off, you must escape and leave your residence immediately. And this year, just a few weeks ago in October, was Fire Prevention Week. And the motto this year, because there's a new theme every year, the motto was, fire won't wait, plan your escape. And that's just saying it takes about 3 minutes in today's homes, new homes, to go from a very small fire to a very big, hot, smoky, dark fire. Because everything in our house is made of plastic. Look around this room. Plastic chairs, plastic tables, plastic carpet, plastic everything. And when that stuff gets going, the smoke from plastic is black. It's not even gray, it's not light, it is pitch black. And so you've got about 3 minutes from when your alarm goes off to hear it and escape the house before you can't escape. So what can you do to plan your escape? With your family, with whoever you live with, sit down and talk about how you would escape a fire in your house or your apartment, and talk about ways out of every room. So you're just going to say, well, the front door is probably our best way out, but if there's a fire at the front door, the side door. And if there's a fire at the side door, maybe the patio door, if you have one of those. So plan your routes to escape and have some alternatives. The second thing is, once you know your ways out, you need to have what we call a safe meeting place. Safe meeting place outside, away from your house, where everyone can be safe until the firefighters arrive. That could be a tree. That could be the neighbor's driveway. That could be the sidewalk in front of the neighbors. That could be a light standard. That could be just something. And it's always at the front of the house. Sometimes I ask students, I say, where would you go outside? Oh, the backyard. The backyard's not great because many backyards are fenced in and it's very narrow to get between the house and the backyard and the front. If there's fire coming out windows, you might be back there and our firefighters would have to get you. So always pick the front of the house where our firefighters can see you when they're arriving. And one of the first questions you're going to get when you call 911, well, they're going to ask you what your emergency is. Oh, I have a house fire. And what's your address? I live here. And the next question, they're going to say, is everyone out of the house? That's the next question they're asking. I guarantee it. Because we want to know if everyone is safe outside. The best things that I ever heard when I was on my way to fires was our communications would give us updates. And they would get on the radio and say an update, whatever it might be. And then they'll say, everyone is out of the house. And I thought, whew, good. Now all I have to do is put a fire out. And no one's going to get hurt. No one's going to die. It's just property, everybody. You know that. It's just property. You can replace it. You have insurance, perhaps. It's just property. Even your most prized possessions, they're just property. Your family is worth more to you than all that stuff, and everyone knows that. And your pets are very important too. Don't get me wrong. Some of you people might have a pet. Just one thing I want you to remember, if you're going to, when you press the test button monthly, every other month, and it goes off, your pet initially might be afraid and hide or freak out. But if you keep doing that regularly, they'll get used to it and they're not going to hide. So when they do hear the smoke alarm go off, they're not hiding on you and afraid. Because I don't want you, if you can't find your pet, please just get outside, call 911. Our firefighters will do their best to find your pet. Pets are smart. They'll find a place where it's not as smoky and not as hot. And they're pretty smart. But please, I know pets are part of your family. Please just let our firefighters see if we can locate them when we're in the house. And we've brought out many pets. I personally haven't. I would have liked to, but I was with crews where, you know, you got a puppy underneath your jacket or you got a kitty underneath your jacket. Kids ask me about fish in the fish tank. And I say, yeah, we do our best to get your fish. I think we birds sometimes, but so we do our best. But last thing, never, ever, ever, ever go back into the house. Even if there's a, gosh forbid, even if there's a family member. I know, I tell this to my wife and I say, you know, you can't go back in. And she goes, but people, and I get it. But one person injured or deceased is bad. A second person, that's doubly horrific. And I've seen 2 documentaries recently where people have gone back into the house to bring out family members. They didn't have working smoke alarms. And both instances, the person that went back in perished as well. And they weren't just older people. One was a young son-in-law. His mother-in-law was still in the house, and he was young and strong, and he didn't make it back out. So now we have 2 dead people. So please let our firefighters go in. If you're caught in the house and you can't escape, it's possible. Go to the room the farthest away from the fire, close the door. Make sure, have a cell phone with you. If you don't, open the window and yell and scream for help. But go to the room farthest away from the fire, close the door, try to keep the smoke out of that room, and call for help. Call 911, yell out the window, do whatever you can, but you can't run through a burning house. The chances of you making it out are very, very slim. So you just stay in the room. Last topic I want to talk about for escape. Some of my friends out there in the virtual world might live in a high-rise or a condo. High-rises and condos are a little different than your house. I live in a house. So when the smoke alarm goes off, I know it's in my house. It's not in the neighbor's house. It's there. I get out. If you live in a condo and it's 20 stories high and the building smoke alarm, fire alarm system goes off, you don't necessarily have to leave. You don't have to. And I'm going to give you some reasons why you don't have to leave. The building alarm goes off and you hear it and it's loud and you're asleep or what wakes you up. All I want you to do is a couple things. Make sure it's not in your apartment, and it would be your smoke alarm in your apartment that would go off first anyways. So there's no fire in the apartment. Okay, we're good. Just go to the door to the hallway. Just put your hand against that doorknob or whatever and make sure there's no heat there, no smoke coming in under the door. If there's nothing, just crack open your door, look up and down the hall. If there's no fire, no smoke in that hallway, then that fire could be on the 2nd floor and you're on the 20th. You're okay. If you want to stay, you can stay. If you do see fire or smoke in the hallway, choose the best way out, right or left, away from the smoke and the fire, and exit your apartment, exit your building. High-rise apartments are very interesting because they're called compartmentalized. We have fires on a very regular basis in high-rises. The whole unit could be burned out totally, but because they're all surrounded by cement, the ceiling, the floor, the walls, everything but the windows, the fire really can't escape to other units. It might get into the hall, but the doors are fire rated for at least 2 hours. So as long as that door is closed when you leave that burning unit, the fire can't get into the hall. And our firefighters knock that fire down in the unit. So that's why I tell you, if you live in a high-rise or a condo, you hear the alarm go off, you just make sure that you're safe where you are. Sometimes it's safer just for you to stay put while our firefighters are trying to get into the building, get up the stairs or the elevators. Less people hang out in the lobby, especially in the winter. And I'm trying to get through the lobby with all my gear. And it's dangerous for those people because I have axes and I have hoses and I have a bunch of stuff, or little kids that I can't even see because they're so small and I've got my mask on and I can only see kind of this way. So that's why I talk about that. If you do have fire in your unit, in your high-rise unit, in your condo, and your smoke alarm goes off, and oh my gosh, there's a fire on the couch because of a cigarette butt. Everybody gets out of the unit, obviously, and close that door. Close the door behind you. And then as you're going down the hall, look for the nearest fire pole station, activates the alarm, and out you go. And the rest of the building's aware, the super's aware, it goes to the fire department, and we're on our way. Again, you should have a designated space outside your unit too, in case you all have to meet. just a safe spot, usually visitor parking lot, something like that. And high rises, other than that, we try not to use the elevators. We ask you to use the stairs. Firefighters are using the elevators to get up to the fire floor. We prefer that you use the stairs when you're exiting that building, if you have to exit the building. Final thing, calling 911. I don't know if everyone's aware, but I have talked to new Canadians who always ask me this question almost every time. If I call 911, is it free or do I get charged? And the answer to that is, if it's an emergency and you call 911 for police, fire, or ambulance, you will never be charged as long as it is a legitimate call. So do not be afraid to call 911 when you have an emergency. The most important stuff you need to be able, if your language, your English is not your second language, it's not your first language. I told my seniors this the other day, the Cantonese and Mandarin speaking, wonderful, amazing people. I said to them, I said, their language in English is quite limited. But I said, if you can say 3 words when you call, it will help us out a lot. Because sometimes I hear over the radio, there's a call being dispatched and comm goes, there's a very big communication issue here. And we're not sure what the problem is, but there's a lot of yelling and screaming. That could be for a fire. That could be someone on the floor. That could be so many. So fire, just fire or ambulance or police. And so I got them, I said, everybody with me now, fire. And they're like, fire. And I said, ambulance, police. And if you can say that, we can get the right resources on the way. The next thing that will help us is at least an address. Whatever your address is will help, although we can ping cell phones now and we can ping to where that call came from. But it's just 2 things, what your emergency is and what your address is. And then we'll have firefighters and we get there within about 4 minutes. From the time we get a call till the time we arrive at our house, about 4 minutes. And that's with when you guys give us good information. The better the information, the better. I think I've been on for at least an hour.
No, you're not.
Okay.
That's great.
So now's an opportunity to, and again, the recording, we can, I think we're going to shut that off. And then I'm going to be here to answer questions.
Yes, before the Q&A, we stopped the recording, but I just want to say a few words represent MIAG. Thank you very much, Brian. It's very insightful and life-saving. I'm really shocked at myself that I've done a lot of wrong things, like around the stove, put my paper, put my towel down, and all the spy rack, and all the checking for the smoke alarm and everything is very insightful. And all the things that as a handy woman, we should keep an eye on it. But this is a show of gratitude for Brian, and thank you very much.
Thank you,
And
Mary.
we will stop the recording now, and then we will go back to the Q&A. A lot of ladies, I saw that on the chat. There's a lot of burning questions for
Thank you, everyone.
Brian. So
You're welcome.
That's